Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
One thing that Mark Dice definitely missed is when Pink dressed up as a Freemason at the 2009 MTV Awards. And this is the thing that she genuinely did.
What is this, when she had the leg up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had a checkerboard sort of leg. She had one breast exposed, but with a sort of a pasty, is it called, over her nipple. She was blindfolded, and she had some sort of, she had a cable tow around her neck, which is essentially a noose.
Yeah, cool.
Again, the internet went crazy about this because it seemed to be invoking the first initiation ritual of Freemasonry, where you have to expose your chest, and I think they put a knife to it, and you're blindfolded, and you've got a noose around your neck, and they make you pull up one trouser leg. And obviously the checkerboard is used in Freemasonic temples and buildings and such. And he totally misses this, like, basically. As far as I could understand, basically she did it for the same reason that Rihanna would later do it, because she knew that this wasn't like, if you were on the internet and were aware of the Illuminati, you would be aware at this time that every single time there was any event, an MTV award, the Super Bowl, the World Cup, anything, somebody out there would interpret it as a satanic ritual. And so people started kind of fucking with people because they realized that this would get traction. They also realized that, it's quite artistic and a bit weird. Before you do this, like, it's going to get people talking. But also, I mean, a perfect example, again, is the recent furore at the Olympics. Was it the Olympics where the Dionysian feast was misinterpreted by the conspiracy crowd as, again, mocking the Last Supper, mocking Christ? And it's like, no, it's nothing to do with that. You're just symbolically illiterate and hysterical, and so you grab hold of the wrong end of the stick and start beating wildly around the bush with it. And this is essentially what happens with all of these examples. One example, though, that is, I have to admit, a little bit strange, is Azalea Banks. Now, to be fair, I don't think Azalea Banks was a big deal when I don't know actually when she came out. When did 212 come out? You know what? I don't care. Anyway, he doesn't discuss her in the book, but she's openly claimed to practice Palo Mayombe, which is a spiritual tradition involving ancestral worship and ritual ceremonies rooted in Central African spirituality. In 2016, she shocked followers with a now deleted Instagram video showing her cleaning out a room that she claimed had been used for 3 years of ritual sacrifices, including blood-stained walls and feathers, which are common items in certain Palo Mayombe ritual settings. She also had a pet cat named Lucifer. That's not the weird thing. I don't care about that. What is slightly strange is in the 2020, the cat died. Now, in January the following year, 2021, she's caused, shall we say, controversy by posting videos of Instagram of her digging up the cat's remains and appearing to boil them. She posted a series of since deleted videos showing her and a friend digging up a bag with from presumably her garden or somewhere like that, and removing the dead cat from the bag, showing a pot of boiling water, putting the cat's remains in the water and boiling it. For what reason, no one's entirely sure. She denied cooking or eating the cat. And some people got the impression that she was preparing the cat's skull for taxidermy. But it's it's difficult. But she later shared photos of an altar that she like. I have to phrase this carefully. This was an altar for Lucifer that she created out of bones. Okay, but it wasn't Lucifer the fallen angel. It was Lucifer the sadly deceased
The cat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which included the cleaned skull of the cat, a bottle of champagne, and other items, which is kind of in line with certain like Palo Mayombe practices. But she's also revealed that she owns a human skull, which claimed belonged to a 6-year-old girl who died of head trauma, as she just loves bones and is fascinated with the afterlife. Yeah. So as we've said, lots of the evidence that basically infers that the Illuminati is a real thing essentially comes from images of artists covering one eye, imitating the eye of providence that we've briefly spoken about earlier. However, there is a problem connecting this particular symbol to the Illuminati. I'm pretty sure you know what it is, Brent, and we may have even discussed it already.
Because that's not the symbol of the Illuminati. The owl is. Exactly.
The Bavarian Illuminati didn't really use the Eye of Providence at all. It's the connection is through Freemasonry. The idea was, in Proofs of a Conspiracy, I think it was, that the Illuminati had infiltrated Freemasonic lodges across the world. I believe it's that book that claims they were responsible for the French Revolution. And the only problem with it from a sort of research point is that it's all bollocks. Like it's not true. It's not accurate. It works on rumors about the Illuminati that were spread by Adam Weishaupt in order to make the Illuminati seem cool. Why did he want the Illuminati to seem cool? So that people would join and give him money. Why did he want money? Because he wanted to import rare books, because he was fascinated with some rare books. So it wasn't a satanic cult. It wasn't even a real cult. He knew that it was all flim-flam and bullshit. He ended up admitting it to a load of people. But they made up this mythos, like fucking Dungeons and Dragons heads or people like that. And people took it seriously. And then in Proofs of Conspiracy, they tied the Illuminati to Freemasons. And so Freemasonic symbols and supposed Illuminati symbols became somewhat interchangeable. The BBC actually did a very good article called The Eye of Providence, the Symbol of Secret Meaning. Originally, the Eye of Providence was a Christian symbol, and the earliest examples of its use can be found in religious art of the Renaissance period to represent God. An early example is Pontormo's 1525 Summer at Emmaus, although the symbol itself was painted on later, perhaps in the 1600s. Another key source of the icon was a book of emblems called the Iconology, published first in 1593. In later editions, the Eye of Providence was included as an attribute of the personification of divine providence, i.e. God's benevolence, as a name of the symbol, and its early usage suggests it was invented as a sign of God's compassionate watchfulness over humanity. But it was the ancient Egyptians who were also originators of the detached eye as a motif. For example, a pair of eyes painted on a coffin that allowed the dead to see in the afterlife, and one of the most famous of all Egyptian symbols, the Eye of Horus. The motif is actually a hybrid of a human and falcon eye, and it includes the bird's dark eyebrow and cheek markings. According to ancient Egyptian mythology, the god King Horus, often depicted as a falcon or with a falcon's head, had his eyes cut out in battle with his uncle Set. With the help of Thoth, he later healed his eyes. The Eye of Horus was therefore a protective symbol, often used as an amulet, a sculpture small enough for a person to carry in their pocket as a form of protection. This and other Egyptian hieroglyphs of isolated human eyes went on to affect European iconography during the Renaissance. At that time, scholars and artists had a fascination with Egyptian writing. The only problem was they didn't fully understand it, and attempted translations were normally riddled with inaccuracies. One of the most famous appeared in a romance of 1499 titled The Dreams of Polyphilo, where the translation of an Egyptian single eye symbol was simply God. In post-revolutionary France, Jean-Jacques Francois Le Barbier's 1789 The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen featured the text of the radical new declaration of the Eye of Providence at the top. In this case, it has become an instrument of paternalistic reason watching over the new egalitarian nation. And that's where you get the fraternity, I can't remember what he says, the thing that was used in the French Revolution, fraternity, I can't remember. Anywho, in Britain in 1794, Jeremy Bentham commissioned the architect Willy Reveley to design him a logo for his panopticon, a revolutionary new prison aiming to allow for continual surveillance of each cell. The resulting design prominently included the Eye of Providence, a symbol now of the unblinking stare of judiciary righteousness, surrounded by the words mercy, justice, and vigilance. A few years earlier, in 1782, the Great Seal of the United States of America was unveiled. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams had proposed ideas for this design, but it was Charles Thomson, Secretary of the Continental Congress, who came up with the pyramid and Eye of Providence, among other elements of the seal, in collaboration with a young lawyer and artist named William Barton. The unfinished pyramid was intended to symbolize strength and duration, with 13 levels to represent the 13 original states of America. The Eye of Providence, like the other two examples from the same period in Britain and France, was the conventional symbol for God's sympathetic oversight of this fledgling nation. In none of those examples was Freemasonry involved with the choice of the symbol. However, the Masons didn't use the Eye of Providence symbol widely until at least the 18th century, and not before Bentham, Le Barbier, Thomson, and Barton had adopted it for their very mainstream purposes. Unfortunately for the conspiracy theorists, the eye on the Providence on the $1 bill tells us much more about late 18th century aesthetics than it does about the authority of secret elites. So, as we can see, it's a symbol of God, and Freemasonry, despite what people will tell you, the G is for the Grand Architect, which is a representative of God, or generativity, if you believe certain other people. Regardless, it's a representation of a creator God. So they're utilizing Christian symbols. Also, there was another thing that Freemasons were kind of keen on, because they thought it was cool and wacky, and it tied in with these rituals and this idea of them being an ancient society. It's mentioned in this, Egypt. And this is where you get the fact that it's the Eye of Horus, because it's the mashing together of the Egyptian understanding of it, which Freemasons liked, and the Christian use of it, which was used by the Freemasons. And so that's where this basically comes in. But as I say, it wasn't adopted by Freemasons until long after it was seen as a symbol of Christianity. Obviously, we've mentioned proofs of conspiracy, egalite, fraternity, whatever, liberty. That's it. See, I knew it was in there somewhere. Anyway, that obviously the proofs of conspiracy connected the Freemasons to the Illuminati, and this is where we get this hodgepodge of different stories coming together in order to give the impression that this is in some way spooky and terrifying. So Dice says that he actually, he's not a square, he's actually a fan of certain types of music. And I was surprised by this, although actually when he said this, I was depressingly sort of, oh yeah, I've seen that type of guy. Do you know what sort of music Mark Dice strangely likes?
I'm going to say death metal or something like that.
It's not death metal as such, but he says that he's a big fan of Muse, Korn, and Megadeth because of their habit of speaking out against the Illuminati. And
wait, so he just likes them because of their message?
Yeah, pretty much. He doesn't like Marilyn Manson because he promotes the Illuminati and was a member of the Church of Satan. Yeah. So, Muse, what's his name? Matt Bellamy. He got into InfoWars in a big way. He's now denounced all of that and says that basically, he doesn't believe in any of it anymore. And he famously wore a T-shirt. Was it Glastonbury or the Reading Festival? And he wrote Terror Storm on the front of it, which was the title of Alex Jones's the most recent documentary at the time. So it was seen as advertising it. Korn, This is basically because there's an interview in Kerrang where they were talking to various different artists about, so are you into the devil? Are you into God? And it was basically a sort of juvenile thing. At the time, Christianity was seen as very strong. And it still is incredibly influential, particularly in America. And Marilyn Manson was using that iconography and that imagery to point out certain hypocrisies of American society. And he was using it as a symbol of basically stifling individualism and using a front to enrich themselves in numerous ways. And so this was the hot topic, are you on Marilyn Manson's side or what? And Jonathan Davis from Korn shocked the entire world by saying that actually he was kind of religious. And that's it. That's literally it. Megadeth, Dave Mustaine, who is a dreadful, dreadful twat, has appeared several times on InfoWars and is apparently a very conservative right-wing Christian, although I have a friend that works in the industry that's told me all sorts of stories about Dave Mustaine that are so libelous that I'll have to tell you off air. But yes, if anybody wants to know what those stories are, messages.
Sign up to the Patreon, you mean?
Yeah, sign up to the Patreon, actually. Yeah, sign up to the Patreon and I'll tell you all these rumors that my sketchy mate said about Dave Mustaine. Anyway, now it's interesting that Dice actually goes for the for metal, because traditionally metal has been seen as Satan's music. Like, they sold their souls for rock and roll. And there's been numerous sort of really ludicrous sort of attempts to tie it with devil worship. One is do you know who the Knights in Satan's Service were?
I do. Kiss.
Kiss, yeah. Now, there's no actual evidence to suggest that Kiss were in any way connected to Satanism, but for some reason, the Christian right in America decided that Kiss was an anagram for Knights in Satan's Service. And their evidence was that they promote sex, which is obviously satanic. That Gene claims to be a demon from outer space, and sometimes he waggles his tongue around and spits blood. And the one thing that they seem to miss was that some people have pointed out that and this was more unfortunate than anything, that the two S's in Kiss, in a certain light, don't half look like sig runes. They aren't. Like, quite a few members. In fact, I think all of Kiss are Jewish. Maybe wrong on that, but they were also accused of being Nazis because of the sig runes. Do you know who Devil's Own Killing Kids even now are?
No.
Dokken. Music band from the 80s. They did Night Warriors on the soundtrack to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. They were accused. This was the thing. Apparently, they would hide their satanic influence in the names rather than just call themselves something like Judas Priest or something like that. They would actually hide it in, the name as an anagram. Apart from Judas Priest, who called themselves Judas Priest, which is clearly satanic. Also, basically, Judas Priest were tied to their song "Better by You, Better Than Me." Sadly, in 1985, 18-year-old Raymond Belknap and 20-year-old James Vance consumed alcohol and marijuana and listened to the Judas Priest album Stained Class for several hours. They went to a nearby churchyard and shot themselves with a shotgun. Belknap died instantly, whilst Vance survived, but was severely disfigured and died 3 years later from complications. Their parents subsequently sued Judas Priest and their record label, claiming that the band's music contained hidden backmasked messages that influenced their son's action. And apparently, if you pulled it back at a certain point, it said, "Do it." Also, Another song that had satanic influence was Ozzy Osbourne's Suicide Solution, also in 1985. A teenager named John McCullum committed suicide after allegedly listening to the song. Ozzy was also known as the Prince of Darkness, and had written a song about Aleister Crowley, and also bitten the heads off various winged animals throughout his career, therefore denoting him as very possibly in league with Satan. Motley Crue, as is the correct pronunciation of Motley Crue, had the song and album Shout at the Devil. Shout at the Devil is the second studio album by the American heavy metal band Motley Crue, released in September 1983. It was a breakthrough album for the band, establishing them as a major act in the 1980s. But it's the name and the cover art, which featured a pentagram, basically was very controversial because it was deemed that Motley Crue were now sort of in league with Satan and were encouraging devil worship. Now, apparently, the bassist Nikki Sixx explained that the song wasn't actually ever really about sort of promoting Satanism at all. It was about pushing back against the perceived enemy, which is the devil. And they were meant to shout at the devil, not shout with the devil. Although others basically went, "Oh, stop being such a mealy-mouthed pussy, Nikki. Everybody knows what you were trying to do. Stop trying to wiggle out of it and just get some balls, for Christ's sake." Anyway, they also decided to completely drop the satanic dalliances because there was poltergeist activity at Nikki Sixx's apartment. And this was witnessed by an A&R from Elektra Records named Tom Zoutant. And this was whilst they were recording the album and considering the name Shout at the Devil. According to Zanout, and this was in the memoir The Dirt, a knife and fork rose off the dining room table and stuck into the ceiling, and other strange happenings occurred, such as cabinets opening and closing themselves and furniture moving. Also, if there was ever any drugs or drink in the house, that would mysteriously disappear. And there's some that have suggested that maybe that was more of an explanation as to what was going on, as opposed to actual sort of satanic problems. Black Sabbath were also accused of being satanic, and it's bizarre because basically, like, what was one of Black Sabbath's main logos?
Isn't it a cross?
It is a cross, yes, which, widely associated with the marketing of Christianity. And so what actually happened was, like, Black Sabbath is because they've obviously got the name Black Sabbath, which is implies some sort of satanic ritual. It's actually taken from the film Black Sabbath, and they started incorporating crosses in their imagery and started wearing crosses all the time because a group of Satanists, or people who claim to be Satanists, were actually following the band around, believing them to be Satanists, and allegedly put a curse on them when they refused to perform at one of their black masses. Apparently, this is early in the group's career. Their dark imagery and sound attracted unwanted attention from actual occult groups. But they basically said that their dark stage persona was nothing to do with the occult, and they were really, really sort of bothered by this. It was at Stonehenge. Apparently, they wanted to play a gig at Stonehenge, but then when it was made clear that the group was properly or took it seriously, they declined. And in the end, they basically ended up hiring a white witch who broke the curse by advising them to wear crosses. But the song Black Sabbath, "What is this that stands before me?" was based on a real incident that was experienced by bassist Geezer Butler. He claims that Ozzy had lent him a book. Was it Ozzy that, he borrowed a book from Ozzy Osbourne about the occult, and he'd been reading that. And he woke up in the middle of the night and saw this dark entity, this shadow figure, stood at the end of his bed. And at this point, he decided to get rid of the occult book. And he didn't mess around with that shit, before ever again. He explained this to Ozzy Osbourne, and Ozzy decided to write lyrics about it, and hence that became the lyrics for Black Sabbath. I once had a book on the occult and ghosts and stuff like that. I didn't buy it. It just appeared one night.
What, someone brought it over?
Probably. Right, but here's the thing. Okay, there is actually a band that were explicitly occult, were promoted Satanism and thought that this was fertile ground for artistic output. And they were actually an influence, they weren't an influence on Black Sabbath, but they were before Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath claims to have never actually heard of this particular band. They're pretty cool as well, actually. Like, have you ever heard of Coven?
No.
Not many people, not enough people have. Like Coven was a pioneering occult rock band. They were like a sort of psychedelic rock band. They sound a little bit like sort of Jefferson Airplane, that sort of type of shit. But all of their lyrics incorporate Satanism and witchcraft, and they are sort of kind of recognized by metal fans as they are the band that introduced the devil horns to music. I know everyone says that it was Dio, and it was the it's that Italian thing against the Iron Horror against that, isn't it? Like, or is it Jewish? I forget. It's the bull's horn to fight off the evil eye, he said. Apparently, he wasn't the guy that did it. Apparently, Coven actually did it. It's on the artwork for their 1969 debut album, which is called Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls. Isn't that glorious? Now, the music is considered underground rock, but it has a heavy emphasis on diabolical subject matter, including songs such as, and this is what gets me, because if the conspiracy crowd picked up on any of this, they'd have a fucking field day. Songs such as The White Witch of Rose Hall, which is apparently based on the story of Annie Palmer. A song called For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Didn't Wasp have a song called that as well? Anyway, they've also got a song called Black Sabbath. They've also got a song called The Dignitaries of Hell. And the album concludes with a 13-minute track of chanting and satanic prayers called The Satanic Mass. So this was written apparently by their producer, Bill Tran, and described as the first Black Mass to be recorded either in written words or in audio. So it might have even, I wonder if it was, because when did LaVey record those Black Masses? I'm not sure. I thought that was more sort of like earlier than 69, but hey ho, regardless. The Satanic Mass was also the first time the Latin phrases such as Ave Satanus was used in occult rock music, a preceding influence to later satanic metal and black metal songs that included such lyrics. Also displayed inside the album was Coven's infamous black metal poster showing members of the group displaying the signs of the horns as they prepared for a satanic ritual over a nude Dawson lying on the altar. Unwanted publicity came to the band from the form of a sensationalistic Esquire magazine issue entitled Evil Lurks in California, which linked counterculture interests in the occult to Charles Manson and the Tate LaBianca murders, which also mentioned the album Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls and its black mass material. And as a result, the album was pulled from circulation. But yeah, people miss Coven by a fucking country mile. There was also another thing that I don't know if that Esquire magazine article talks about it, but do you know what happened on the night of the Tate murders, of the first so-called Manson family murders? At the very same time, Anton LaVey was performing a curse that he deemed was to, and I quote, destroy the hippies.
Wow.
Yes. But there's another genre of music that actively deals with Satanism, or at least the imagery of Satanism. And again, for some reason, the conspiracy crowd, like, they just miss this. In fact, Mark Devlin, who is prominent in the sort of music conspiracy world, when he was writing his second book, I think I'm in his first book actually, and in his second book, he phoned me up and literally said, "You know about this black metal sort of stuff, don't you, Neil? Like, tell us about it, because I've seen it. All these people wearing corpse paint and like looking like devils, and they're using satanic imagery and stuff like that." And I explained it to him, and it just would not go in. It just didn't sink in with him at all. Like, it was like, and he ended up writing a sort of paragraph that sort of basically said, "Oh, this black metal, church burnings and murder and satanic symbolism, it certainly is crazy," or something like that. And it's like, are you fucking mad? You've done 3 paragraphs about how Rihanna's definitely murdering children because of the way that her dress fell, or some shit like that. And then when you're sharing with people actually setting fire to churches and murdering people, you go, no, there's nothing here that we can make a conspiracy out of. That seems too sort of unbelievable. So there's been 2 waves of black metal. Black metal is a music that basically, again, it's got satanic imagery, like it's lo-fi, and it has screeched music, screeched, high-pitched, screamed vocals, and tremolo picking, very, very fast metal, very underground. The first considered true cult, spelt TRVEKVLT, because of course it fucking is, was, do you know where the spawn of the most evil genre of all time actually came from? Like, anyone that's visited it would go, yeah, that makes sense.
Birmingham.
Newcastle. Birmingham is the birthplace of metal. Newcastle is the birthplace of black metal, with Venom.
Right.
Venom in 1981 released their album Welcome to Hell, and it, again followed in 1982 with the album Black Metal, which is where the genre got its name, and At War with Satan in 1984. To be fair, Venom actually sound a bit more like a sort of Motorhead style band. They're still very, very good, but they don't have the sort of the classic sort of elements of the genre that would be codified into it later. Anywho, their lead singer, Kronos, said, "I've always been interested in Satanism, but we're entertainers, and we use subjects like Satanism, paganism to entertain people like horror movies do. Listening to a Venom album is the same thing as watching an Evil Dead movie. I don't go around murdering virgins in my spare time. It's frustrating when people can't make that distinction. I mean, David Bowie is not actually from Mars, is he? But we were always being misquoted in the press. Venom admit to dancing around a campfire with virgins. Utter nonsense." Now, also in 1981, the band Merciful Fate came out, and people might know Merciful Fate. Again, very high-pitched vocals and falsetto vocals, that's the word I'm looking for, corpse paint with an inverted cross on the forehead of the singer, King Diamond. And the band's lyrics deal basically with Satan and the cult, Satan and the occult, and it's central to their identity. King Diamond, who's the singer, followed LaVeyan Satanism, which he described as a life philosophy as opposed to a religion, really. But he basically, he later became what he describes as an eternal member of the Church of Satan. And on their 1984 album, Don't Break the Oath, the song titled The Oath features lyrics and spoken parts that can be interpreted as a satanic prayer or oath of allegiance to Satan. The lyrics explicitly describe a ritual where the speaker denies Jesus Christ and swears loyalty to the Prince Lucifer. It's the most direct prayer elements include lines like, "I deny Jesus Christ the deceiver," and swearing to be a faithful servant to his most archangel, Prince Lucifer. The lyrics also mention the law of Satan, pray and obey it forever. And that's, I think that's, in a different song called Satan's Fall. So, and again, like, Mark Dice has missed this. In Switzerland, Hellhammer were starting to use raw production sounds in 1983. They had the demos Death Fiend, A Triumph of Death, and The Satanic Rites. And they started basically sort of defining them, and a band from Sweden called Bathory started basically making the sound of black metal. In 1984, Hellhammer became Celtic Frost. And that's when Bathory came out. They had their self-titled album in 1984 that's got a goat on it, for fuck's sake. Yeah, exactly. They also started incorporating like Viking and pagan themes and what would be considered an icy sound, which is integral to black metal. In 1987, two very important records came out. Death Crush by Mayhem, which features two severed hands hung from a gate as the album cover. And Sarcophago from Brazil released INRI, which was the words taken from the cross. And these are seen as, again, proto second wave black metal albums. In 1991, the lead singer of black metal band Mayhem killed himself. Per Olive, going by the stage name of Dead, was a person that basically popularized the corpse paint look. He was a very depressed young man. He had a near-death experience when he was young and spent a lot of time talking about wanting to go back to that cold, dark, blue, eerie place where he said that it was the only place where he'd ever felt truly comfortable in life. I believe he drowned and died for a brief time. And that's what Freezing Moon, the song by Mayhem, Freezing Moon, is about, his near-death experience. Anyway, he tried to kill himself with a bread knife, a kitchen knife, by slashing his wrist, but this was unsuccessful. And so he ended up shooting himself through the forehead with a sawn-off shotgun. Euronymous, the guitar player from Mayhem, who was living in the same house with him, came and found the dead body of his friend. And obviously what you would do is call the police, call an ambulance, do something like that. But this isn't the first thing that Euronymous, Oysten Arseth, did. Do you know what he did, Brent?
Not sure now.
He rearranged the scene to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. And then he took photos of his friend's dead body with his brain literally had fallen out of his skull on the bed in front of him. He then took pieces of his skull, which he fashioned into jewelry, and he gave to various other members of the black metal sort of elite, members of the band of Immortal and Marduk and Darkthrone, and basically sort of gave them this as a sort of initiation to be part of what he called the inner dark circle of black metal. Now, this caused a bit of a furore. Later, this photograph was used as an album cover for a bootleg live album called The Dawn of the Black Hearts. So it features the genuine photo of the corpse of Dead as found by Euronymous. This caused Mayhem to briefly split up, and then Varg Vikernes became the bass player for Mayhem on their album, although he's not credited on the album because he ended up murdering Euronymous. He stabbed him to death and murdered him. He claims in self-defense, but that is utter bullshit, because he made an alibi. He had to drive to a completely different city, which was like hours and hours and hours away, and he made an alibi. Why would you make an alibi if you weren't going to do something terrible? But anyway, Varg. Also in 1991, there was one of the first black metal groups, like genuine second wave black metal groups, was Profanatica. Do you know where Profanatica were from?
Nope.
America.
Oh.
Profanatica were active in the USA in 1991 at the same time that Bertram and Darkthrone were getting their first albums together. So in 1992, second wave Norwegian black metal basically started with Darkthrone's A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Burzum with their first album. Also, bands like Immortal, Emperor, and Gorgoroth were on the scenes. So what started happening was that basically in 1992, members of this second wave Norwegian black metal scene initiated a wave of arson attacks on churches. They deemed themselves as anti-Christian and anti-authoritarian and anti-American, and they tied Christianity to America. By 1996, there'd been at least 50 attacks in Norway. Basically, in every case that was solved, those responsible were identified as either black metal fans or members of black metal bands. Varg Vikernes of Bertsum was responsible for burning the Norway's Fantofstav church and also various others. He claimed that he did this with members of Emperor, Immortal, and at one time dragged Euronymous from Mayhem along. He also did things like would leave pagan sacrifices of rabbits hung up on the walls of the churches. But here's the strange and stupid thing, right? Okay, is that basically like this, which is deemed the most satanic music and actually actively panders and uses satanic imagery and stuff like that, and even in the lyrics, like there are sort of Satan and blah 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 blah. It's not real. It's just a LARP, really. Like Bertsum and all of these people wouldn't say that they were Satanists, even though on Bertsum's Ask EP, which means ashes, it shows the destroyed Fantofstav church that Varg himself definitely set fire to. None of them are really Satanists. Like, you could make the argument that there's bands like Watain and Gorgoroth that might be genuine Satanists, but it's not actually integral to the genre. It's more of a sort of aesthetic than anything. It's not to be taken as seriously as you would say. But anyway, one of the sort of like, it's debated whether this book is any good. It's called Lords of Chaos. It was later made into a film that was actually sort of patronized by Necro Butcher of Mayhem. So there's debates as to whether that film is accurate or not. But anyway, the long and short of it is Varg Vikernes of Bertsum, Count Grishnak, as he went, basically. By the way, Bertsum, do you know what Bertsum means?
No.
It's darkness. It's taken from the Elvish off the One Ring to bind them all, whatever that.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that stuff. Like, and cool. So yeah, this is the other thing about Gorgoroth is a type of orc, I believe. Like, Bertsum were originally titled Uruk-hai, and these are grown men that are wearing armor and makeup on stage. Unfortunately, there were a few murders and Nazism and horrific homophobic acts and stuff like that. But hey ho, what can you do? Anyway, there was one thing though in Lords of Chaos. One thing that I found that Varg is interviewed when he's in prison, and I was surprised to hear this. So Varg is asked, what are these flying saucers that people are talking about? And Varg says, UFOs are pre-programmed robots sent out from Sirius. When they discovered the Earth, they realized that they could create life here, but our planet was too far from the sun. Therefore, they set off nuclear explosions to move the Earth, something that explains the asteroid belts outside Earth and why there are glass sheets in the Sahara Desert, something that would have required the tremendous heat to create. As the Earth moved, the equator also shifted, and the equator is the Midgard serpent, the world serpent of Norse mythology that encircles the world whilst biting its own tail. So this corresponds with the myth where Thor fishes his Midgard serpent. The Voluspa, a section of the Elder Edda, states that the gods move the celestial bodies, and the Volva, Sirius, who narrates the Voluspa, tells us that she comes from the world before the present one. Yeah. Varg Vikernes is an ancient aliens proponent who basically seems to have taken Zachariah Sitchin's ideas about the construction of Tiamat and the asteroid belt and the movement of the Earth by the Anunnaki, but rather than he's applied it to Norse mythology, which is strange. Now, and I'm sorry to keep boring people with black metal, but why did black metal arise as well? It was a response to death metal, which was technical metal that was produced in America and was starting to get a very, very highly good sound, a very, very highly produced sound. We could hear all the instrumentation, you could hear all the kick drums and everything. One of the things that they did was they went for good production, and they went for Cookie Monster type growled vocal stylings, like Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel, Obituary, bands like that. That was why black metal decided to do the opposite. Very, very poor production, an icy sound, and screeched, high-pitched vocals. But there was a death metal band. They tended to do things about gore, like splatter. Cannibal Corpse have got an album called Eaten Back to Life that has a zombie literally eating his own stomach out of his body as he bursts from a grave. They've also got albums called Butchered at Birth, Tomb of the Mutilated. Like, Google the cover of Tomb of the Mutilated. Do it at work. Do it at work in the middle of a meeting. Anywho, but there was a band called Deicide. And again, this is a band that has been missed by the conspiracy world, but they are pretty open in their sort of beliefs or aesthetics. The name Deicide itself means literally the killing of God, which perfectly encapsulates, according to their frontman Glenn Benton, their message and mission statement. The lyrics focus heavily on Satanism and the rejection of organized religion, and a literal hatred of Christianity. Like, the titles of songs are like explicitly controversial and confrontational, with songs like When Satan Rules This World, Christ Denied, Kill the Christians, To Hell with God. That's one of their album covers has got Jesus Christ laid out as if in the middle of an autopsy with all of his organs taken out. And that's from the album Once Upon the Cross. So, you know, this gives you an idea. Just to make people clear that he was absolutely serious about this. Do you know what Glenn Benton, are you familiar with Deicide?
A little bit, yeah. I seen him play in Nottingham at the record label place. Where was it? Earache.
Earache. Yeah. Oh, well, they were doing their Light of the Serpent album or whatever. Scars of the Crucifix.
I'm not sure. I think it was a New Year's thing. I'm not sure if it was the millennium or just after, or one of those years, somewhere late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, you got into a couple of the Earache New Year's Eve parties, did you?
Yeah.
I got into those. Look, so he's worked there. I saw the ones with like Iron Monkey played, and that I didn't see the Deicide one. But oh shit,
yeah,
we spent our entire lives like crossing by each other.
It's crazy.
Anyway, so do you know the distinguishing look that Glenn Benton has? Are you familiar with the body modification that he decided to go with?
Yeah,
he's got he branded an inverted cross into his forehead, and so he's got an inverted cross in pure scar tissue on his forehead. He also claimed that he would commit suicide at the age 33 to prove that he was better than Jesus. But then he decided that he changed his mind when he sort of like started to get close to that age, and decided to say instead that only cowards and losers choose to kill themselves. But anyway, Deicide is another band that the conspiracy crowd just completely miss. And again, I don't think they're evil. I don't think they're part of the Illuminati. I think they're shit up. But if we're going off symbolism and stuff like that, the symbolism in this is pretty overt.